The galaxy remembered many wars, but none could compare to the silence that came before humanity's wrath. The stars themselves seemed to pause when the spark was lit. At first it was only a small incident, something the arrogant alien race thought would be forgotten. They believed humans would tolerate the insult. They thought humans, with their patience and diplomacy, would bend once again. But they were wrong. Very wrong. It began on a quiet trade route near the edge of human territory. A convoy of medical ships was traveling, carrying relief supplies for colonies recovering from a natural disaster. The ships were unarmed, brightly marked with the universal sign of aid. Everyone in the galaxy knew such vessels were protected under ancient accords. No one was foolish enough to touch them. No one except this species. They struck without hesitation, tearing through the convoy like predators attacking prey. When the smoke cleared, nothing remained but wreckage, drifting bodies, and silence in the void. The news spread quickly, echoing across human space. At first, many thought it was a mistake. Perhaps pirates, perhaps confusion. But then the message came. The enemy race announced proudly that it had destroyed the convoy. They laughed at the weakness of humans. They mocked the loss of innocent lives. They declared that the humans would do nothing, because humans were too civilized to answer with fire. That was the moment something broke deep inside the collective soul of humanity. In the council chambers of Earth, the leaders sat in silence as the recording of the alien broadcast played. The alien voice was sharp and cruel, filled with arrogance. The counselors looked at one another, but no one spoke. The silence was heavier than steel. In that silence, a decision was made without words. Humanity had been patient for centuries. They had tolerated insults, endured provocations, and offered peace even when others offered war. But this was different. This was not war between soldiers. This was slaughter of the helpless. And for humans, that was unforgivable. Out among the stars, people wept for the dead. Families screamed in grief. Entire colonies demanded justice. Soldiers, long disciplined and restrained, felt their blood heat with anger. Admirals, who had held back fleets in countless diplomatic struggles, began to prepare in silence. Humanity did not scream. Humanity did not threaten. Humanity simply grew quiet. And in that quiet, the galaxy began to feel the tremors of something ancient and dangerous awakening. The alien species celebrated, believing their strike had shown strength. They held parades, their leaders boasting of victory. They laughed at the idea that humans could ever strike back. But their laughter hid fear they did not admit. Somewhere deep inside, they had heard the stories. Old whispers about what happened long ago, the last time a species had pushed humans too far. Those stories spoke of worlds burning, of fleets erased from the stars, of an anger that could not be stopped once it was unleashed. But arrogance is a heavy cloak, and they wore it proudly, even as the shadows of their doom began to stretch over them. In distant starports, human ships quietly disappeared from public routes. Factories ran at full speed, building weapons no one had seen for centuries. Old alliances were activated with a single coded signal. Generals met in sealed rooms, faces carved from stone, speaking little but planning much. Every move was quiet, deliberate, like a predator circling its prey. The galaxy watched, waiting for an announcement. None came. Humanity said nothing. And that silence was more terrifying than any threat. In bars, in markets, in meeting halls across alien worlds, whispers began to spread. The humans are quiet, they said. Do you remember the last time they were quiet? Some dismissed it, claiming humans were weak. Others shook their heads, remembering old scars and old battles. Fear began to creep like frost into the hearts of those who thought themselves safe. The spark had been lit. It was small at first, hidden under the weight of grief and anger. But sparks grow into fire, and fire consumes everything in its path. The aliens who struck the convoy believed they had won. They had no idea that they had just signed their own death sentence. Humanity did not forgive such crimes. Humanity did not forget. And when humanity was pushed too far, the galaxy itself trembled. The stage was set. The silence of humanity was not peace. It was the deep breath before the storm. The gathering of fury older than empires. The last species that made humanity angry had vanished from history. Their names were not even remembered. Soon another name would join them in that darkness. The spark had been lit, and soon the fire of humanity's rage would burn across the stars. The galaxy waited for the humans to speak. Weeks passed after the destruction of the convoy, but no words came. There were no angry speeches, no threats broadcasted across the stars, no declarations of war. Instead, there was silence, cold and unbroken. To the arrogant alien species that had committed the attack, this silence looked like weakness. They told their people that the humans were afraid, that the mighty species of Earth had finally been broken. But they did not see the storm forming behind the quiet. The humans did not waste time on noise. They did not shout or argue. They moved like shadows. Fleets vanished from known star charts. Patrols were recalled without explanation. Colonies that once bustled with trade suddenly became sealed fortresses. Messages that left human space were short, simple, and without emotion. To outsiders, it seemed as if the humans were withdrawing into themselves. To those who knew better, it was the sound of weapons being prepared. The alien leaders laughed in their grand chambers. They declared victory and promised to strike again. Their people cheered, blind to the danger that their rulers had unleashed. They looked at humanity's silence and mistook it for surrender. They forgot what silence had meant the last time another empire had provoked humanity. They forgot that silence was not weakness. Silence was focus. And then, without warning, the first blow fell. It happened on the edge of the enemy's territory, where their warships patrolled with arrogance. A fleet of 30 alien cruisers had gathered, their commanders boasting that they would soon push deeper into human space. But they never returned. Their transmissions ended abruptly, cut off mid-sentence. All that remained was static. When scouts were sent to investigate, they found only wreckage. Burning metal scattered across the void, shattered hulls drifting silently. The battle had been so swift, so brutal, that not a single distress signal had escaped. No survivors were found. The alien High Council tried to hide the news. They told their people the ships had been lost to an accident, perhaps a star's gravity well, or a pirate ambush. But rumors spread faster than lies. Merchant ships passing near the wreckage carried the truth across the stars. Whispers began. The humans had struck back, and they had done it with terrifying precision. Days later, another fleet vanished. Then another. Space stations near the border went dark. Their signals cut as if a blade had sliced through them. Entire garrisons disappeared overnight. Each time, the same question spread. How? No one had seen the human ships. No one had tracked their movements. It was as if the humans had become invisible, striking from the shadows and leaving only destruction behind. Inside human command, the admirals spoke little. Their faces were calm, their voices steady. Orders were given with quiet efficiency. Soldiers who had waited for permission to fight now moved with cold purpose. There were no cheers, no shouts of rage, only discipline. Humanity had turned its anger into steel, and that steel was now cutting through their enemy's pride. The alien leaders began to panic. For the first time, they realized the danger they had awakened. Their fleets were larger, their ships more numerous. But numbers meant nothing if they could not see their enemy coming. Every day brought new reports of destroyed squadrons, vanished outposts, and worlds cut off from communication. Their empire was bleeding, and the humans had not even spoken a word. Across the galaxy, other species watched in silence. Some were horrified. Others felt a grim satisfaction. All of them remembered the old warnings, the ancient stories of what happened when humanity was angered. And now they saw those stories coming to life again. The first blow was not just the destruction of ships and stations. It was the destruction of arrogance. The enemy had mocked humanity, had called them weak. But now they saw the truth. The humans did not fight for pride, or for conquest, or for glory. They fought only when they were forced to. And when that moment came, nothing could stop them. The galaxy held its breath as the war began in earnest. The humans had delivered their first blow, swift and merciless. More would follow. The silence of humanity was gone. Now came the storm. The first blow had fallen, and the galaxy trembled. Fleets had vanished. Outposts were silent. And the enemy species that once laughed now whispered in fear. But the humans did not celebrate. There were no songs of victory, no speeches of triumph. Humanity was not finished. What had come so far was only the beginning. The true storm was still building, and its power lay in the preparation that followed. On Earth, the great cities glowed with restless energy. Factories that once built machines for peace now thundered with the sound of war. Shipyards across the Sol system burned with light as they forged massive vessels, weapons of iron and fire. Old designs were pulled from archives. Ships meant for total war, created in secret centuries ago, when humanity swore never to be caught unprepared again. Engineers worked without rest, knowing every second mattered. Every rivet, every circuit, every hull plate was a piece of humanity's fury, shaped into steel. The military command was calm, almost unnaturally so. In dark rooms deep beneath the surface of Earth, admirals and generals studied maps of stars, moving pieces like players in a game of chess. But this game was not for glory. It was for survival. No one raised their voice. No one argued. Each leader knew their role. Humanity's rage had become cold, focused, and unstoppable. Orders spread like lightning to colonies across the stars. Fleets gathered silently at hidden coordinates, their movements concealed by the most advanced stealth systems ever built. Millions of soldiers were summoned from across human space. They left their families with no promises of return, only the silent determination that their sacrifice would matter. The enemy watched with growing dread. Their spies tried to learn what the humans were planning, but found nothing. Every border probe was destroyed, every infiltration attempt uncovered. It was as though the humans had built a wall of shadows around their territory. To the outside galaxy, human space looked quiet, too quiet. But inside, it was alive with energy, burning like a forge. The civilians of humanity were no less determined. Entire populations volunteered to aid the war effort. Scientists created new weapons, pushing the limits of technology. Miners dug deeper into asteroids to supply the endless hunger of shipyards. Farmers grew food not for profit, but for armies. Every human, from the smallest child to the oldest elder, understood what was at stake. The aliens had not just attacked ships. They had spilled innocent blood. They had broken the one rule humanity would never forgive. And now, every human became a part of the response. The galaxy began to feel the shift. Merchant ships whispered of human fleets that appeared and vanished without trace. Patrols reported strange signals in the void, the echo of engines too vast to belong to normal ships. Rumors spread of weapons never before seen, of superweapons hidden in the dark, waiting for the command to strike. No one knew what was true, but everyone knew one thing. Humanity was preparing for something vast, something final. The alien leaders tried to rally their people. They promised victory, claimed that numbers would win, and that humans were only pretending to be strong. They spoke with fire in public, but behind closed doors, their fear grew. Reports came daily of new losses, new strikes that seemed impossible. Each loss brought them closer to desperation. And still, humanity said nothing. Not one declaration of war, not one broadcast of demands. Only silence as fleets grew larger, weapons more powerful, and the storm drew nearer. There was one thing the galaxy had learned long ago, a lesson carved into history by those who no longer existed. Humanity never struck without preparation, and when their preparations were complete, the result was always the same: annihilation. In hidden chambers, human commanders waited for the moment. Their soldiers trained endlessly, perfecting every tactic, every maneuver. The fleets grew restless, but the order to move had not yet come. The humans were patient, far more patient than their enemy realized. They would not strike until every piece was in place, until the blow they delivered would not just wound, but end the war in a single, crushing storm. The silence stretched on, heavy and unbroken. Across the galaxy, everyone felt it. The humans were preparing, and the weight of that truth pressed down on every world. The spark had become a fire, and that fire was being fed with steel, blood, and determination. When it was unleashed, there would be no escape. The enemy had awoken something ancient, something unyielding. Humanity was readying its wrath, and the galaxy waited in fear for the moment when preparation ended and judgment began. The silence broke like thunder. For months, humanity had prepared in the shadows. Fleets had been built, soldiers trained, and weapons awakened from hidden vaults. The enemy believed they had more time. They thought humans would hesitate or try to negotiate. But humans were finished with patience. When the wrath of humanity came, it came all at once like a tidal wave of fire across the stars. It began on the outer colonies of the enemy empire. Entire human armadas appeared without warning, their ships cutting through the void like blades of light. No transmissions, no demands, no offers of peace. The first shots were fired, and within hours entire star systems burned. The enemy fleets rushed to meet them, confident in their numbers. But numbers meant nothing. The humans fought like a machine, every move precise, every strike devastating. Their ships were not only powerful, but coordinated with terrifying unity. Alien commanders who once mocked humanity found themselves screaming for reinforcements. They begged their fleets to hold the line, but the line broke again and again. Human warships struck from the darkness, disabling entire squadrons before vanishing into the void. Massive dreadnoughts unleashed firestorms that shattered planet-side defenses in minutes. Elite human marines descended onto enemy worlds, cutting through resistance with ruthless efficiency. They left no stronghold standing. The galaxy had never seen such fury. The humans did not fight for conquest or glory. They fought for justice, cold and merciless. Every target was chosen with care: shipyards, command centers, supply lines. Humanity tore apart the enemy's empire piece by piece, striking at the heart of their power. The aliens realized too late that this was not just war. It was annihilation. One by one, proud alien fleets crumbled. Admirals who once boasted of crushing Earth now whispered of retreat. But retreat was impossible. The humans gave no quarter. Every ship that fled was hunted down. Every world that resisted was silenced. The more the aliens fought, the stronger the human advance became, as if rage itself fueled their engines. The galaxy watched in awe and terror. Across neutral worlds, screens lit up with intercepted transmissions, images of burning skies, shattered fleets, and soldiers marching through ruined cities. Some species pitied the enemy. Others whispered that it was deserved. But all of them remembered the same ancient truth: you never made humanity angry. In the enemy's capital, fear spread like a disease. The leaders who once laughed now trembled in their halls. Reports arrived every hour. Another fleet gone, another world lost. Entire sectors of space had gone dark, swallowed by the storm. The humans were not just winning, they were erasing. And still, the humans did not speak. No declarations, no demands. Their wrath was not something that needed words. Their silence was louder than any threat, and their actions were absolute. The alien population began to break. Civilians fled in desperation, their ships clogging the skies as they tried to escape the fury descending upon them. Refugees whispered that the humans were everywhere, striking faster than light itself. Entire cultures that once cheered their leaders now cursed them for provoking the storm. But it was too late. The humans had unleashed their full strength, and it could not be stopped. Fleets moved like an unstoppable tide, consuming everything in their path. Worlds burned, empires collapsed, and the enemy species finally understood what it meant to awaken humanity's rage. This was not war. This was judgment, and judgment was merciless. The wrath of humanity spread like a storm, and the galaxy felt its shockwave. Every broadcast, every intercepted signal carried images of fire and ruin. Alien fleets reduced to drifting wreckage, proud cities collapsing under orbital bombardments, once mighty worlds falling silent. Humanity had unleashed its judgment, and the echoes of that judgment reached even the most distant corners of known space. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, silence reigned. Delegates of countless species sat frozen, their eyes fixed on the glowing projections before them. One after another, systems once belonging to the enemy empire were marked in red, erased from the star maps. Entire sectors were vanishing under human assault, and no one dared to interrupt the display. Even those who once dismissed humanity as young and reckless now trembled. They realized the truth. The humans had not risen to become a galactic power by chance. They had risen because their fury, when awakened, was unstoppable. In markets and starports across neutral space, whispers filled the air. Traders spoke of convoys of human dreadnoughts moving in silence, engines burning like suns. Refugees from the enemy empire flooded into stations, telling stories of destruction so complete it seemed like myth. The humans did not conquer, they said. They erased. Some listeners scoffed, saying no species could wage such a war without mercy. But others nodded in grim recognition. They had seen this before. long ago when another empire had provoked Earth. That empire no longer existed, its name forgotten by history. The fear was not limited to the enemy. Even allies of humanity grew uneasy. Their ambassadors asked for explanations, for promises that the fire would stop once justice was served. But humanity gave no reply, no speeches, no reassurances, only silence. And that silence weighed heavier than words ever could. On the enemy's homeworlds, despair spread faster than fire. Entire governments collapsed under the weight of panic. Leaders who had once laughed at humanity now hid in bunkers, praying their worlds would somehow be spared. Soldiers deserted their posts, unwilling to face the advancing storm. Families fled into the void, abandoning their homes. But everywhere they went, the shadow of humanity followed. The galaxy saw something else as well, something even more frightening than the destruction. They saw the discipline. Humanity's fleets did not rage wildly, did not strike randomly. Every attack was precise, calculated, exact. They targeted shipyards, command centers, supply depots. Civilian populations were spared when possible, but the war machine of the enemy was dismantled with ruthless efficiency. Humanity was not just angry. Humanity was controlled in its anger, and that control made them terrifying. Neutral observers began to record what they saw, their voices shaking as they reported to their own worlds. "The humans are not fighting a war," one broadcast said. "They are delivering a lesson," others agreed. They saw in humanity not conquerors but executioners of justice. The galaxy could not deny the truth. The enemy had attacked the innocent, and humanity would never forgive such crimes. But beneath that truth lay fear. Because if humans could unleash such fury on one enemy, what would happen if another species ever crossed the same line? What would happen if one mistake, one miscalculation, placed them in humanity's path? That question spread across the stars, filling every council chamber, every Senate hall, every commander's mind. The shockwave of humanity's wrath reshaped the galaxy. Borders were redrawn in whispers, alliances reconsidered in fear. Species that had once looked at humans with contempt now looked at them with caution, some even with awe. The enemy empire was crumbling faster than anyone had thought possible, and it was clear the end was near. The galaxy waited for humanity to speak, to say what they wanted, to demand tribute, to declare victory. But the humans remained silent, and in that silence the galaxy felt something it had not felt in centuries: dread, for they all knew the same truth. The war was not over yet. The final blow had not yet fallen, and when it did, the name of the enemy species would be erased from history, just as others had been before. Humanity's judgment would be complete, and the galaxy would never forget the shockwave of their fury. The end came quietly, not with a grand battle, not with banners raised in triumph, but with silence, the same silence that had marked the beginning of humanity's wrath. The enemy empire was gone, their fleets shattered, their leaders executed or vanished, their homeworld reduced to ruins. Systems once filled with proud voices were now empty, only husks of cities drifting under broken skies. A species that once mocked humanity had been erased, and their name would soon fade into the shadows of forgotten history. Across the galaxy, the news spread like a wave. One by one, neutral species confirmed the truth. The enemy was no more. Humanity had done what they promised with their silence. They had not threatened. They had not negotiated. They had not begged. They had delivered judgment. Cold, precise, and absolute. In the halls of the Galactic Council, a strange stillness gripped the delegates. They sat in their grand chambers, speaking in hushed voices, afraid to even mention humanity too loudly, for they knew what the lesson was. Humanity had not fought for conquest or territory. They had fought only because their line had been crossed. The massacre of the helpless, the slaughter of innocents. That was the one crime humanity would never forgive. The final lesson was clear. Provoke humans, and you may vanish from history. Scholars debated endlessly. Some said humanity was dangerous beyond reason, a threat to galactic stability. Others argued that humanity was the galaxy's shield, their fury a balance to cruelty and arrogance. But all agreed on one fact: no one dared test them again. Not after what they had seen. Not after an entire species had been annihilated with such relentless resolve. On Earth, The soldiers returned in silence. There were no parades, no grand speeches. Humanity did not celebrate what had been done. They mourned the dead, both their own and the innocents lost before the war began. They rebuilt their convoys, their hospitals, their colonies. Life continued, but beneath it all was a memory that burned in every human heart. They had been forced into rage, and the galaxy had witnessed what that rage meant. In the void, drifting wreckage told the story of humanity's judgment. Burned hulls, silent stations, and shattered worlds stood as monuments to the price of arrogance. Refugees of the fallen species whispered in fear, for even they could not believe how completely their people had been destroyed. Survivors hid in distant corners of the galaxy, but their voices were weak, their culture broken. They would never rise again. Other species took the lesson to heart. Treaties were signed, borders respected, and provocations avoided. For all their ambition, for all their rivalries, the galaxy had found a common truth. Humanity was patient, but their patience was not infinite. And when it ended, so did empires. The final lesson was not one written in books nor spoken in council chambers. It was carved into the stars themselves. Do not mistake humanity's silence for weakness. Do not mistake their patience for submission. For the last species that made humanity angry had been annihilated completely. Their history ended not with glory, but with a void where their name once stood. And so the galaxy moved forward, forever changed. Every leader, every commander, every diplomat remembered the storm. They remembered the spark that became fire, and the fire that consumed a people until nothing remained. Humanity returned to its silence once again, but now the silence was different. It was not the quiet of peace. It was the quiet of a predator that had fed and was waiting, patient as ever, for the next fool who dared test its fury. The final lesson echoed through the stars. Humanity forgives many things, but not this, never this.